All right, let's pull back the curtain on something you don't normally see. Forget the quarterly reports for a second. In the real world of corporate competition, there's this hidden, high-stakes game going on. And in this game, information is everything. It's the ultimate prize. And every single company is either the hunter or the hunted.
But there's that great quote, "Denial is more than a river in Egypt." So many businesses out there just assume they're safe. They think their secrets are locked down tight. The problem is, they're in denial about the real threats, the ones that are lurking just out of sight.
So you have to ask yourself, is that you? Is your company fighting a war it can't even see? Are all those traditional security measures just giving you a false sense of safety, leaving you completely exposed on the real battlefield?
And that right there, that brings us to the core of the issue. It's this huge misunderstanding. See, most companies think they're playing defense, but the truth is they're playing the wrong game entirely. They're using a completely flawed mindset.
When you think about protection, you probably picture what we call security. The visible stuff, the gates, the guards, the security cameras. It's all about building this big, strong fortress. But here's the kicker. Your most dangerous competitors, they have absolutely no intention of storming your gates.
This is where you see the huge difference between two mindsets. Security is reactive. It's got a police mindset. It shows up after the crime has already happened to figure out what went wrong. Counterintelligence, on the other hand, that's a spy mindset. It's proactive. It's all about figuring out the threat and neutralizing it before you lose anything.
Here's an easy way to think about it. It's like your health. You can wait until you get sick and then scramble to get well, or you can take care of yourself to stay well in the first place. When we're talking about the survival of your company, the choice seems pretty obvious, right?
Okay, so if it's not the big fortress walls, then what on earth are you supposed to be protecting? This is where we have to totally shift our thinking. We need to stop worrying so much about the big secrets and start paying attention to the small, almost invisible clues you're leaking every single day.
Look, every company has its Coca-Cola formula, right? That one heavily guarded, super secret asset. But a smart rival knows that attacking your strongest point is just a waste of time. It's a fool's errand. They're going to hit you where you're weak, where you're exposed, and where you're not even looking.
What they're really hunting for are what intelligence pros call cues and signals. These are like tiny little breadcrumbs that on their own mean nothing. But when you piece them all together, they reveal your entire game plan. We're talking about things like a subtle change in your packaging, a new distribution partner, or something as simple as a block of hotel rooms booked for an upcoming conference.
To really see how powerful this is, let's jump into a real-world case study. A classic battle that's sometimes called the headache wars between Johnson & Johnson's Tylenol and a new competitor from Bristol Myers.
So Bristol Myers was getting ready to launch a new product called Daytrill. They did all the standard stuff like test marketing in a couple of cities, but here's the thing. They left a trail. They used the same 2 cities they always use for launches, a pattern that Johnson & Johnson was actively watching for. J&J's intelligence team saw it, and they knew immediately what was coming, and almost exactly when.
But the one cue they found that changed everything, the absolute killer detail, it was Daytrill's launch price, $1.89. That was a full dollar cheaper than Tylenol at the time. And that single piece of information was the key that unlocked J&J's entire counterattack.
So on April 1st, a full 2 weeks before Daytrill was even supposed to hit the shelves, Johnson & Johnson preemptively dropped the price of Tylenol to match it exactly. Boom. They completely blew up Daytrill's entire marketing strategy before it even got off the ground. They didn't win because they had better guards at the factory. They won because they were better spies.
So how do you do that? How do you build a system like the one Johnson & Johnson had? How do you stop being the one who gets hit and start being the one who sees it coming? Well, it's not about luck or guessing. It's about having a formal process.
See, the whole goal here is to build a system, a machine, really, that lets you anticipate what your rivals are going to do next while protecting your own plans. And to do that, you have to move from just hoping for the best to having a structured, active plan.
And this is that playbook. It's called the Business Intelligence Protection Model. And the most important thing to see here is that it's a circle. It's a continuous cycle. Protection isn't a project you finish. It's a constant process of learning, adapting, and getting smarter.
The cycle is made up of 5 key steps. First, you figure out what truly needs to be protected. Not everything, just your most critical cues and signals. Then you assess who's hunting you and what they're capable of. Step 3 is the big one. You assess your own vulnerabilities by thinking like your attacker. How would they come after you?
Only then do you build your defenses. And finally, you analyze what worked, what didn't, and you feed that knowledge right back into the start of the cycle.
Now, once you've really mastered defense, once you've built your shield, you can move on to the master level. This is where you go on offense. It's where you start actively shaping the battlefield by turning your rival's own intelligence gathering against them.
Now, this involves a tactic called deception. And I know that sounds like a dirty word, but we're not talking about lying or cheating here. In the world of counterintelligence, deception is a strategic tool. It's about taking what your rival thinks they know and actively misleading them for your own advantage. It's not immoral, it's just incredibly smart business.
Let me show you a perfect, just brilliant example. A company called Johnson Controls, or JCI, had poured $20 million into a truly game-changing new product. And they knew, for a fact, that their main rival, Honeywell, was hunting for any information they could find about it.
So here's the setup. JCI's secret project had the code name LOBA, L-O-B-A. Honeywell's spies got a whiff of it, but they made one tiny, critical mistake. They misheard the name. They thought it was called Lobo, L-O-B-O. When JCI found out about this mistake, they also realized they were still 10 months away from launch. That's a huge vulnerable window.
But did they panic? Did they hide? No. JCI went on the attack. They took a totally minor, pretty unimportant product upgrade they had lying around, spent $500,000 on this huge, flashy ad campaign, and they deliberately named it Lobo. They fed Honeywell the exact piece of misinformation that Honeywell was already looking for.
And what happened? Honeywell saw all the ads for this fake Lobo, correctly figured out that it wasn't a threat, and they relaxed. They literally slowed down their own R&D, thinking they dodged a bullet. And then, 10 months later, Johnson Controls launched their real product, the revolutionary one, called Metasys, to a market that Honeywell had completely left wide open. It was a total checkmate.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Knowing all this, knowing that your rivals are out there, hunting for your cues, trying to read your patterns, trying to guess your next move, you just have to ask yourself, in this hidden information war, which one are you? Are you the hunter or are you the hunted?